Oh, all right, we're back. Happy 2015, everyone. Let's
Yay!
continue our talk about suicide. Should we be living in 2015? I don't know. Um, going to continue our analysis of whether life is worth living. I know this is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to talk about Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus. So I guess I'll just relate a kind of a personal experience that makes you think maybe you'll think I'm crazy, and then we can kind of bridge out the conversation from there. So, like I said, I'm a Redditor. Sometimes I read Reddit. I'm a lurker on Reddit, and one of my favorite subreddits to watch and read is Watch People Die. And I often look at Watch People Die, and what it is a bunch of GIFs and movies of people dying, and it's very disturbing, and it haunts me. But I find myself drawn to it. And the ones that haunt me the most are the ones where there's someone just walking down a street and somebody just smashes right into them full speed and they're gone. A mother and a daughter are just gone. And that's it. That's the end of their life. Um, I don't know what to make of a life like that. It frightens me to my core. Just the thought that tomorrow, I don't know who, one of us, one of the three of us, could be destined to die tomorrow. It's very possible that, if determinism is in some way correct, from the start of the universe, Jesse or me or Justin, one of us is just destined to die tomorrow. What would that? I don't know. Like, I guess that's the feeling I get when I read this book. I think Camus wants you to feel like you're the man being carried away to the execution chamber. And now that you know, like, for example, if I just told you to right now, you're going to die tomorrow. What would you do in response to that statement? I mean, now you really know. He kind of suggests that we live as if we don't know we're going to die, but now I've just told you you're going to die tomorrow. What would you do in response to that? I mean, how would you feel in response to that? What would life mean in response to that? And of course, in a very broad way, that's how we are actually living right now. But if I were to tell you that right now, I think you would feel a lot of the meaning of life would slip away very quickly. I don't know if you could continue living the same way you used to live, right? Isn't that kind of what he's talking about here? I think the first thing he says when we realize the absurd is, one day we realize, whether we like it or not, that we have to carry time, right? Time doesn't carry us, we carry time. And we're going to die one day. I think that's the beginning of the realization that life is absurd. What do you think? When do you realize that life is absurd? This is one of the main tenets of this book, that life is kind of, in a strange way, meaningless. In a very big way, in a very fundamental way, the world or the universe is meaningless.
I like what I think death really is a big part of this. I also, though, I really liked what he said when he talked about, he says, like, when you have a loved one who asks you, what are you thinking? And, sometimes just to be polite, you say nothing, because really you were thinking about something you shouldn't have been thinking of. But there are times when you say nothing and you really mean it, right? And it's kind of jarring. Like, you're kind of like, wait, I really haven't been thinking about what I've been doing. And I agree with him on this point. If you really take that train, starting there, and make it bigger and bigger, things start to seem weird and meaningless. Like, why am I here at this dinner table right now at this time of day? Why am I in Japan? How did I even get here? What a weird life I live. It's just so weird to imagine. Like, and here I am, like, in Tokyo somewhere, and I have a job and I have a family. How did that even happen? It's nothing I imagined when I was young at all, right? Everything starts to seem weirder and weirder. Like, why did this happen this way? Why did another way? And there's really I can't come up with an answer per se. It just kind of happened. And yeah, things start to seem more and more groundless as I go bigger and bigger. So I like that example too.
There's no fundamental reason as to why things became the way they are right
Yeah.
now, right? Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And I have moments like that. I really do. I'm just sitting at my kotatsu, and it just hits me. What a weird life I'm living. How strange it is. How alien it is to me living it.
Right. I mean, like, I don't know. I kind of feel like death in a way does that for me, because it just kind of makes me think like, well, I mean, I guess I think one of the biggest illusions, and I don't know if Camus is going to talk about this, and I think he is in the next part about, is that we watch movies and TV a lot, and movies and TV are filled with stories, and stories tend to generate their own kind of meaning and arcs and purposes, but that's not really how life is. Life doesn't really run like a story. There are like just meaningless things going on in life all the time. And yeah, you can look back at your life and make a story out of it. But I think that's part of what he talks about when he says like, oh, meaning can somehow be a trap in your life, right? I mean, like when you look back at your life and you make a story, you're cutting out a lot. Like in the same way that Hegel had to cut out a lot of history when he was writing his history of the world, right? And this is what Kierkegaard accused him of doing, right? When you start like looking back and trying to cut your life into some kind of meaningful purpose, like you start to cut out everything that actually did exist, right? You start to ignore everything in your life that really happened, but this doesn't somehow fit into your nice story. And I guess it's just really hard to tell a story. Like, for example, the one I talked about, like the mother and daughter crossing a road one day, and they're just gone. Now, if maybe if you made it into a movie, you'd tell the story from the perspective of the husband trying to get justice for those two departed souls. But how would you tell that story from the mother's perspective or the daughter's perspective? It would just be, well, I'm really looking forward to next year. I really got a lot going on for me. I got some troubles going on in my life, and boom, gone. They're just gone. Nothing has been concluded. Nothing has added up to anything. None of their projects have gone the way they wanted to. Everything is just over. And they had no control over that at all. It was just something that happened, and then now they're just wiped off the face of the planet. This is why I like the Coen Brothers movies, especially like No Country for Old Men, because that's how life is. Life isn't like a story. Life is absurd. Life doesn't make nice stories for you. And when you really, really look at the world, when you really see, this is what he wants you to do. I think what he's into is, he's saying when you look through the perspectives of meaning and like, I don't know, metaphysical purpose, what you're doing is you're really not you're not seeing the world for what it really is. And I kind of agree on this point.
Actually, I really get what you're saying about the fact that, I mean, you do have to cut stuff out. I mean, but that would be meaning itself. I mean, like, for something to have meaning, right? You need to push other stuff into the background for that meaning to be generated. If it's something like importance, you know what I mean? Like, there needs to be that split, for meaning to be born. So yeah, I mean, it requires a cutting out of quite a bit of stuff. So on that level, I'm down with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I want to keep it on the level of some kind of metaphysical.
Metaphysical, yeah.
Like ultra meaning to the world, like not on the level of kind of a personal meaning.
This is something that actually, as I was reading, I really had to remind myself of constantly, which is kind of like, I think Camus was talking about, like, in terms of ultimate metaphysical meanings for the world or for the universe, and because there are times where I'm kind of like, what? Why does this follow from this? You know what I mean? Like, why are you saying there's no meaning all of a sudden when we're talking about death or something? When obviously, even if I'm going to die, I still think it'd be meaningful if I would still like to keep my house for that day. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to be homeless until I die, too.
Right. I mean, like, I think he wants to freeze from the idea that there is such a thing as ultimate meaning. Yeah. Like, is it that we can appeal to, like, we are actually living the correct way. Yeah, and that will actually lead up to something. Yeah. I mean, for example, to use my death example again, let's just take it even crazier. Imagine next year, a meteor just destroys the Earth. Everything that has ever happened on the Earth or ever will happen on the Earth is over next year. That's it. Humanity is finished. A crazy glob of grime grew on a planet for millions of years, a couple millions of years, and then it was over, and that was it. And in that sense, if you think there's some kind of ultimate purpose to humanity or the world, well, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. I mean, then it's just over, and you're right in the middle of all your projects, right? And there was no God didn't save you. There was nothing to appeal to. I mean, maybe he wants to say in the light of that. For example, if we knew that in like 20 years that the Earth would just simply be destroyed, could you carry on? Could you carry on in that world?
Well, I'm curious if this is what because he has that. He talks about how we subjectively we insert meanings onto things with like the telephone example.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says, listen, so oh, we're hearing this guy talking, and this is a subject, language. This is a subjective meaning, and we impose on him. If we couldn't hear him talking, we would just look like a fool. It would be a pantomime. So this is, and 100%. I don't think he's 100% limiting himself to these absolute meanings.
Right. I mean, like this is where I'm a little bit. That's why I wanted to take it down. Like when I was talking about meaning before, I wanted to even see how it could work even on a smaller level, right? Like, because but I really think that. I mean, I don't want to be charitable here because, like, I kind of agree with you, Justin. Like, I mean, just because there's no ultimate meaning to the world, that doesn't mean I can't make my own. But I mean, if we were to try to make an argument here, if this is what Camus is up to, the saying that meaning itself is just simply out the window, right? I mean, the best argument I can make for him there is to say that when you make these meanings up, even on a small personal level, you are doing violence to your experience of the world. Yeah. And you're also giving yourself a false hope, because in there's no way in which like any of your projects will ultimately be justified in the way that you're hoping them to be. Yeah. Right.
I mean, I guess that's the problem. Is like are you hoping them to be justified in an ultimate sense? Is the question. I mean, and if you are, then yeah, he's got you. I think he's got you there to a certain extent. If you're hoping they're but I don't know if you're not.
I know this is my problem with it. But I mean, the best I can do is to say then that I'll be on his side. Like, then you're still going to do violence to your experience of reality.
Yeah, actually, this is kind of important for the first section of the Myth of Sisyphus, because he kind of toward the end he kind of gets into this. He says like basically, look, he's got something that I really like. It's very impressive. It's very nice. Is that he's deadly honest. He commands you to be deadly honest. He commands you to be honest with yourself. And basically the whole first chunk of this is kind of like, if we're really honest with ourselves. Really honest. How should we draw these things out? And like one of the things during this honesty, where he says, living kind of defines living is accepting your true condition, right? As it actually is. So I mean, if you are eliminating parts of your true condition to create some sort of meaning, he would say, right, kind of you're chopping up life itself, which is the very value you need to maintain, right? You're not looking at things the way they truly are. And if you look at things the way they truly are, this is his ultimate honesty. If you're truly honest, then you'll see all this stuff evaporate.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the part that it confused me a little bit, but I mean, and this is the part that I think is one of the more controversial parts of the book that we might as well just jump to right now. Is like he's basically saying the quantity of experience is what matters, right? I mean, yes. Quantity or for even quality, right? So in other words, like you could have, I don't know, some kind of great, awesome experience for 20 years or something in your life, but that life cannot possibly beat a lucid 30 years of life, right? Yeah. In other words, like there's no experience that can win out against simply just raw more life. Right? There's nothing that can possibly do that. Now, I think a lot of people would be, hesitant to agree with this. First of all, I just want to ask, what do you two think about that argument that simply, there's nothing can beat simply raw more life. There's no life that could beat. For example, someone died at 40 and someone died at 50. There's no life that 40-year-old could have led that could beat that 50-year-old.
That's the thing. Like, this is where I ran into a lot of walls, because I want to ask, is Camus qualifying this?
I think he
I
is.
kind of think he is. He's like living equals lucidity,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
That's
So like, you got to be lucid. So if one of these guys is lucid and the other isn't, he beats the other guy. But like, if both of them are lucid, for one for 40 years, one for 50 years,
Yeah.
then the lucidity guy, that beats you out. Like the 50 years lucid guy,
Yeah.
win, I
Says
guess.
that explicitly, I believe.
yeah. He does.
Yeah, he says like for the absurd man,
Yeah.
and the absurd and the extra life involves. Therefore, not. I'm sorry, I forget where he is, but he's said, yeah. Thus, it is that no death, no emotion, no passion, no sacrifice could render equal in the eyes of the absurd man.
Yeah.
So this is based on the assumption that both of these people living for his example is 40 and 60. See, the people living 40 and 60 years were both aware of the meaninglessness, as he would call it, of life.
Yeah, but I think even lower than that is the non-lucid life. I mean, like, this is a comparison of equal things. So in other words, what he's saying, and right, it gets down to it, that there's nothing that simply can beat more life. I mean, on the top of that scale is just simply a lucid life. And that's it. There's no experience, there's no adventure, there's no, I don't know, what you can dream of, romance, that could simply beat lucid living. In other words, seeing reality for what it really, really is. I just want to get your impressions, yes or no?
The first thing, just maybe a side point, it feels like he really is smuggling in a value here. This doesn't seem meaningless. Obviously, lucid living is more meaningful than non-lucid living. No? Okay, but that on the side. Let's leave that for a second.
Sorry, you gotta go on.
So
I can protect that, but
okay, I definitely, please do. Okay, this is again where I have trouble, which is this, like, if we're talking in terms of ultimate meanings, like ultimate metaphysical meanings, then okay, maybe yes. But if we're not including ultimate metaphysical meanings, if we're talking about like meaningful lives but unjustified meaningful lives, then I think that I don't buy that. I think so. For example, the lucid Nazi lived a worse life than the lucid guy who worked for the Red Cross. And yeah, that's it. I'm bringing in meanings here, but these meanings I'm not justifying ultimately, by the way, either. So I'm with him on that page though.
What if I gave you the choice and said, so Justin,
Yeah.
you can die now with your meaningful life, or I can give you someone else's life, and you can live those extra 20 years.
Wow, I get somebody else's life though, so I have to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're lucid, though.
I could cheat and say, well, that's not me anymore, but I'm not going to do that because I'm somebody else. I'm not going to do that. I see where you're taking this. Yeah, I wouldn't take it.
You wouldn't take it. You'd die.
Yes.
You would die. Okay.
I don't want to be anywhere else. Like when people ask me who else would you like to be, like this is going to sound.
I would want to qualify this by saying it's just you, except you get to live longer.
It's just me, but I live longer. But then what's different then?
Oh, you don't live this. Well, then I suppose it's not you. You don't live that meaningful life or whatever. I don't know what it would be. It's hard to say because he says a lucid life is the best kind of life.
Yeah, right.
It's hard to quantify what that is.
you'd have to have a qualifier. Like if you were to say, listen, Justin, you can either die tomorrow, and have lived your entire life, have all your experience up now, or I can give you another 20 years as an erase from memory your PlayStation 3.
Oh, right. Or how about this? Like I could make you into the hikikomori, the shut-in who lives till he's, I don't know, 100. Which one do you?
Well, I would not take that one. Like I don't know. I'm not gonna say I had like the worst, most suffering-filled life. I'm sure many people suffered more than me, but I did have a time when I was very, very close to a hikikomori mentality, and it was not good. And at the time, I just felt like life wasn't worth living, and not in like a huge sense. I felt like my life wasn't worth living. I wouldn't like to live that life.
So I guess in a way you're kind of disagreeing and saying, well, there are some experiences or some meaningful experiences that can simply outdo pure life. Okay, that's all I want to get out of you right now. Jesse, what do you think? Which one would you take?
Although
Do you agree?
this is a tricky thing because I think none of us are devaluing. None of us are on the ledge that Camus is expecting us to be on the ledge on when we're making this decision. He's the reason why Justin doesn't want to be hikikomori. Why he in his when you're approaching the hikikomori mentality. I've actually been kind of a hikikomori right now thanks to my work, but I know exactly the mentality you're talking about. And the only reason why is such a difficult and dissatisfying mentality to be in is because you're comparing your life to a ruler, where that defines a standard of happiness that you're just not living up to. If you were able to throw away that ruler, there's no reason I couldn't enjoy my hikikomori life as much as I enjoy my semi-hikikomori life right now. And in my case, you're not really offering me a very different solution. But, so I can see where he's coming from. Personally, if it was the me right now, you offered me, like I said, hikikomori might not be the best example of my case, but if you offered me, another 100 years in a lifestyle that I would find as dissatisfactory as Justin felt the hikikomori on the me right now, I would say no, I wouldn't take it. But if I could somehow, I can kind of rationally understand how you might go in and throw away this ruler, like Camus is saying. And if I could do this, I'm not entirely sure what I would be if I did. But if I could do this, I see no reason I wouldn't take the extra years.
Okay, so I just want to. Well, I guess the only one I'm going to challenge then is back to you, Justin, because Jesse, you're going to take the extra life. You're going to take life. What if I were to tell you this? You are assuming that you're lucid.
Me?
Yeah.
Why do you say so?
Because
because the other life could be better, right?
What if I said that I can give you a life that's the same amount of life as yours, but is actually lucid? Like, in other words, you seeing reality for what it really is. Then what would you take? You're dying at the same time.
Oh.
Which one would you take? You're seeing really lucidly. In other words, you're seeing reality for what it really, really is, as opposed to this one.
So, what, do I live again? Do I go,
No, you're just choosing between two lives. This one, the one you're doing now, and which I'm doing the crazy supposition that you're not lucid.
Okay.
And you're being the opportunity to see life as it really is. In other words, I'm saying that you're in the Matrix, and someone's giving you the opportunity to take the red pill.
Yes, I would take it. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I would definitely take it. Yeah.
So, what would you do if that was a shorter life than yours? For example, what if you lived 10 years less?
I would take it.
You would take it.
Yeah.
What if you lived even 20 years less?
It'd be tough, but I would take it. Yeah. I do not want to be in the Matrix. I would not. The experience machine, the Matrix. I don't want to be in there.
I think that's what he's kind of saying, though, that meaning does to you, right? Doesn't it kind of put you in the Matrix in a crazy way, right? It gives you these false walls that you live in about how reality works and what everything adds up to. And when he says to live a lucid life, it means to come back into Zion and have your sexy dance party with Morpheus.
Yes. Yay? I'm regretting this pill now.
I mean, do you think my comparison is at least a little bit between the non-lucid life and the lucid life? It's kind of like either living a short and gruesome but real life outside the Matrix, or living a very comfortable but illusory life inside the Matrix. I think when it comes to that question, I know that I would take the outside the matrix. I want to be, and I think you said you want to live outside the matrix.
Definitely.
How about Jesse? Which would you take, inside or outside the matrix?
Oh yeah, I would probably take outside.
Okay, I mean, like, in that way, I mean, at the very least, I just want to defend Camus a little bit on this point and say, well, at least on that point, I think he's right. As in other words, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like at least I have an intuition that I want to live a real life, right?
Yeah.
In other words, I want to be connected to reality somehow. And that even if you went on, the greatest dragon slaying adventure in the Matrix, that couldn't add up to a life outside the Matrix.
Yes.
There's no experience inside the Matrix that could trump an experience outside the Matrix. At least can we give it Camus that much?
Okay, yeah, I'm giving you that.
Okay.
I'm giving him that. Well, I would have to put a lot of qualifiers on, but for today's discussion, yes.
Okay.
Basically, yes. But yeah, I mean, like, I think we disagree. I think Camus and I maybe would disagree than what you can do outside of the Matrix, though. Like,
Right.
and I think we'd still get into that meaning struggle a little bit.
The value of meaning.
Yeah. If he is down on eliminating these metaphysical meanings, or personal meanings, not only metaphysical meanings, but like personal, interpersonal meanings too. If he's down on that, or if he's trying to do that, yeah,
He might just simply say that your meanings are just a little mini matrix that you're making up in your world, and you're not seeing reality for how it really is. You're doing violence to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have a response to that. I know I would how I would reply to him, but I get where he's coming from on that point.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that kind of scared me, I was taking his lucid absurd man to the extreme, but I was having difficulty. I said, and when I was just a second ago, I'm not entirely sure what it would be like to be the absurd man. Again, assuming I'm understanding him correctly, but I was having trouble discerning what would be the difference between being an absurd man and being a psychopath.
Well, I mean, like, for example, I think a good way to get the feeling of what the absurd man is, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, is I want you to imagine that you're in a dungeon, and the prison guard has come, and he's dragging you towards the guillotine. So now here you are. You're not at the guillotine yet. You got, I don't know, he's going to be dragging you for a while. So you got a good 10 minutes to go before you hit the guillotine. So on your way to the guillotine, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be sitting there, for example, I don't know, trying to solve math problems? Are you going to be counting the number of bricks on the way? What are you going to be doing on the way to? Are you going to be thinking about, I don't know, some fantasy world? Are you going to be pretending that you're slaying Dungeons and Dragons or something? Or you're playing Dungeons and Dragons? Or are you going to be the absurd man, which is the man, he's going to drink up. He's going to drink up every single moment that he's got left. He's going to experience everything. He's going to feel the breeze. He's going to look at the sun. He's going to hear the sounds. He's going to drink up everything reality has to offer. That's my best explanation. I don't know if I'm wrong.
Okay, so that's kind of that's actually like exactly what I was thinking too. But I was thinking just like in your example, it's very easy and so to imagine what it would be like. But if you can imagine I am the lucid man living right now. Now I realize that all meaning is just subjective, very poppycock. So as in my life right now, the Jesse of today, maybe I would place greater value on, playing on my DS than I would on waiting for a bus. Whereas to the lucid man, to the absurd man, I'd realize that playing on my DS, that's the only reason I place value on it is simply because I personally am placing a value on it. There isn't any inherent greater value on it. So really, to the absurd man, playing on my DS and waiting for the bus would be equal. So I'm not. This is where I can't really imagine what it would be like like to live as the absurd man unless I'm like some sort of
Two-Face.
well.
You'd be like Two-Face. You'd flip a coin.
It seemed like a weird. I mean, I was seeing a lot of parallels when I was thinking this through between the absurd man and the stoic.
Yeah, I was thinking about this.
Me too.
But the stoic I can still kind of imagine a little bit better. And would I be just like some kind of I don't know what I'd be like. Would I be a robot or would I be Two-Face?
Well, I mean, for the absurd man, what the difference would be that one of you would be playing on the DS and thinking that, I don't know, everything's adding up to something. The other one's just playing on the DS, but he knows full well that basically he's biding his time till he dies. That would be the full difference, right? That he's not convinced that this is all going to add up. I mean, like on the way, pulling you to the way to the guillotine. I mean, if someone asked you, Jesse, are you going to translate that last paper for me? You'd probably spit in his face, right? But maybe not the person that's been tricked into thinking, like, for example, that they have to die for some greater cause or something, right? I mean, like, this is the only difference. And I think in many strange ways, it is like the Stoic. But I think maybe on a slightly different angle, it's like Stoicism.
Yeah. I definitely want to hold too many questions about the absurd man's life off until next time, because that's the next section, the absurd man, and then we're going to get a much clearer picture about what he's thinking about, what the absurd man would walk around doing. Although it's definitely a legitimate concern, I'd say.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. I was trying to come up with a good picture, but I don't know. Let's see if my picture holds up. I guess for the most part, for me, all that I got. The most important thing is just to realize that there is no ultimate there's going to be no metaphysical ultimate meaning to what you're doing, and as long as you realize that fully, then every action is equal, is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that, but in an ultimate sense,
in an ultimate
yes.
sense, yeah, right, exactly.
Ultimate sense, yes. Then every action is equal.
I mean, it just reminded me almost like what Wittgenstein said in Tractatus, like all propositions are of equal value. You know what I mean? Like that's what it would turn into. You know what I mean? Like they're just propositions. There's nothing to tell one apart from the other, right? I guess in some ultimate sense, he's trying to say this, but on a more personal level, I don't quite see how this pans out for me, anyway.
Okay, so you want to talk about suicide now?
Yeah. Let's get into suicide a little bit since it's our topic.
Yeah. This is our big topic, so I guess we kind of need a little bit of introduction into what's going on here, because the book really isn't about suicide as much as it's about living in a meaningless world, I think.
Yeah, or maybe it's about, if we're honest with ourselves, when the way things really are, should we kill ourselves?
Yeah. I mean, does a meaningless world lead to suicide?
Yeah.
Should we die in a meaningless world? And, I mean, personally, before I went into this, and I'm glad he reached a similar conclusion, I liked the conclusion in this book, actually. Because, for one, he admits that you don't often reason yourself into suicide. And for me, at least in my understanding of suicide is not a judgment about the world. It's not a judgment that the world is crazy. Well, it could be. I mean, it's a judgment. It's more of a judgment about yourself meeting the world, right? I mean, in other words, like the reason why people that commit suicide just don't run away. They don't run away to a different country, a different place, is because the judgment is about themselves. I'm a terrible person. The world is better off without me.
Yeah.
The judgment is about them. That's why they can't escape, because wherever you go, there you are. Right? So that's why you'd commit suicide. And it's similar to the conclusion that Camus has reached here, right?
Yeah.
He's saying, basically, if you commit suicide, you're giving in to meaning, right? Yeah. In other words, you're so frustrated with the world not making sense. In other words, something not going the way you want it to go. You can't stand the absurd world.
Yeah.
So you're so desperate to have a world with meaning that you just off yourself because you can't live in the craziness of the world. Whereas what he's saying is we have to be strong enough to accept that the world just doesn't go the way we want it to go.
Yes, and I did really enjoy. I liked what he did too. I'm leaving on the side whether his appraisal of the existentialist he talked about was accurate or not. I really liked how he flipped it too, where he said he talked about philosophical suicide, which is killing the mind, to go toward the world, like eliminating you or the mind to go to the world, which is what philosophical suicide, which is what he claimed, like Jaspers and even Husserl and Kierkegaard and all these guys did. And the flip side of this would be elimination of the body to go toward the meaning, or elimination of the world, I guess, your world to go toward the meaning in the mind, right? So I love the parallel between both these. I thought it was really well done, and I agree. I kind of liked his conclusion too. I agree.
Yeah, on this point of the book, I really like the conclusion here. I was fully in support. What did you think, Jesse? Yes or no on his verdict on suicide? What did you think about his?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the only reason why people commit suicide, and he's willing to admit that. In the book, he often does. But what did you think about his conclusion?
Oh no, it's spot on.
Yeah, he said when he finally came to his answer, though, yeah, he said, like, you shouldn't kill yourself because life is meaningless. It's actually more reason to live. It makes life even better.
Yeah.
That life is meaningless, which is it's a very dangerous sentence, I think, or it's a difficult sentence, like better but meaningless. Well, anyway.
That's also.
Yeah. I get it though. I get it.
Yeah. That's also one of the things I think he was going for with that quantity of experiences.
Yeah.
That, when you commit suicide, you're like I'm not having enough quality experiences.
Yeah.
But he's saying, fuck quality, it's quantity here, yo.
Yeah. Which somehow makes it into a meaningless world, even though that's a value. But okay, but I halfway through, I almost start thinking: is he separating value from meaning? I don't know. I was just like, because I could not. Some of these things I could not.
Well, that seemed like math to me, actually. You're saying, okay, listen, what?
Adding it up is math, but saying that a lucid life is better than a non-lucid life is not math, and saying that quantity is better than quality. It's not math either.
Quantity versus quality, I kind of got.
Yeah.
If you imagine, because to him he said clearly, to people who live the same amount of time, they have the same amount of experiences. So for this time, based on this logic, it's not like one movie is one experience, because clearly two people who live the same amount of time, one person has seen more movies. But it seemed like he was almost saying like each and every second is an experience.
Or could be, if you're lucid.
Could be considered an experience. So
outside the matrix.
Outside the matrix, yeah. So if we wipe away meaning, normally, like I said, I might say that playing my DS has more value than waiting for a bus. But if I wipe away that meaning, then that's just 1 second plus 1 second plus 1 second plus 1 second, and then it's not too much of a value judgment to say that all of these units of experience have a value of 1. It's better to have a stockpile of 200 than a stockpile of 150.
But that's still a value judgment.
Yeah, it's not.
I get it though. I get it. It's very light.
I understand exactly.
It's a diet value judgment. It's value judgment. Pepsi Light.
Value judgment. It's still a value judgment.
Kind of a Diet Coke value judgment. Yeah.
He also valuing life. Also, there's a strange sense in which she's constantly always valuing the truth here, but she never seems to come out directly and say.
Exactly. This is like core, and I really respect him. This is one of the most impressive things in this is his love for the truth, his love for it's extreme honesty, being honest with ourselves and not lying to ourselves and looking at reality square in the face.
Yeah.
That's why
he wants to ask, can we consistently do that?
Yes.
Although, if I was really, really cynical, right? In a good way, I think Nietzsche is necessary for this conversation, because Nietzsche has to ask that fundamental question: what is the value of truth? That question has to fundamentally be asked. Like, why? Why is being honest so good? What is the value of truth? But that's the thing that could be taken up a little bit later.
Yeah. It's not exactly an easy one.
No.
Yes.
But he seems convinced that, and I am too, in a certain way, that like a life outside the matrix is somehow fundamentally better than life inside the matrix. Another way you can think about it is like flowers for Algernon or something too. Like, that amount of lucid life that he has when he's intelligent, right, compared to his entire life of non-lucidness is, it's tons more valuable.
And so basically, on your Matrix metaphor, by the way, I really like it, but I do want to qualify it with something that's very important in this essay, which is the revolt. And the Matrix metaphor breaks down at the level of the revolt, I think, because the revolt requires both things to be there. It requires the mind and the world, and it requires the struggle against the world. So you can't just safely locate yourself outside of the Matrix per se.
But they weren't safe outside the Matrix. The machines were there.
That's what the machines were there. Yes. I just want to say, like one of the I really like the section in Absurd Freedom about the revolt, which is that the absurd man lives. He keeps the absurd alive, and what is it to keep the absurd alive? It's to revolt, which it's just to be lucid. It's to be conscious, and not fall into either side, not fall into the mind side, not fall into the world side.
Right. My Matrix metaphor would work better if, somehow you could, I don't know, all of a sudden just fall into the Matrix.
Yeah, and then come out and fall back, right? You'd be, standing at, the border or something between Zion and the Matrix, right? And the absurd man just kind of sits there, not accepting anything, right? He's constantly revolting against them. But it's this struggle that makes life worth living for him. It's this struggle to be lucid. It's this struggle not to go either way. And he calls it it gives life value.
Isn't the struggle to see the truth?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, the truth, the absurd truth shall set you free, basically. I think. But
I always was ultimately wondering, isn't this the ultimate value here is simply to see what's true, what's real?
I agree.
There's nothing better to him than seeing what's real.
But I just want to say, also though, he just said, the struggle itself gives man his magnificence. And I really like that section where he talked about, and I really think this is true. He said, to impoverish that reality whose inhumanity constitutes man's majesty is tantamount to impoverishing him himself, right? In other words, you got this person who's like, yeah, reality's really simple, man. You just gotta screw chicks and get money, dude, right? This guy is impoverishing reality in the way he's thinking, and I agree. I really agree. He becomes an impoverished person himself by not seeing the complexity in life, by not looking at how deep life is. And I think someone who can see this is fighting a better fight, is fighting a deeper struggle, and I that's why I really like the section on the revolt. It struck me very well. I mean, provided all this stuff is not meaningful, I don't know. But this section I really liked a lot about the revolt. So that's, I don't know, yeah. If it fits so well, I guess the Matrix still works at some level, but it was one of the sections that impressed me the most. This and the section on freedom too.
Yeah, that was great.
Quite a bit, actually.
I guess it might as well just incorporate the way that, like Jesse said too, that it reminds me of Stoicism, in that the Stoic man also too does not expect reality to make itself into a story, right? I mean, the Stoic and the absurd man has to be ready to realize that everything he does probably will add up to nothing, or the absurd man knows it will add up to nothing ultimately. But for the Stoic and the absurd man, both of that, it doesn't matter. That's not what's really important. The absurd man is kind of more focused on looking purely at the truth, I guess.
Yeah. I guess one thing too I compared him with Epictetus directly too, was that if you remember Epictetus, and a lot of people do this too, but Epictetus, one thing Epictetus did to break Roman tradition, to break Roman law, was he saw himself as kind of commanded by Zeus in a certain way, and all he had to do is follow Zeus's commands. And this has been how religion in general has been able to free people from the laws of society, to escape them, to go towards something different than the doxa or the common sense. They looked to God and they found a value outside of society. This is exactly, in a weird way, in a really weird way, this is kind of what Camus is doing. He's saying it's not God up there who can break you from society. It's the meaningless of the world itself can, in the same way God did, can break the rules of society, can free you up from society and allow you to act more differently.
Like in a very simplistic way, I kind of felt that was similar to Kierkegaard's negativity, in the sense that like this is the step in which you negate the world, right? You feel alienated from the world, reality, meaning, societal meanings and pressures. In other words, you've just shut them all out, and you've kind of isolated yourself from the world. This is the beginning of the revolt, and it felt like, in a couple of maybe more superficial ways, the negativity in Kierkegaard too.
And this is Heidegger straight. This is straight Heidegger right here too. Being toward death and anxiety. He's pulling this straight from Heidegger. Oh, and I'm sure he talks a lot about Kierkegaard too. But I mean, this is kind of where it goes, doesn't it? Your freedom comes from your freedom comes from the fact that you discover that there are no ultimate meanings. There's nothing you must conform yourself to.
And he did mention responsibility there finally.
Yes.
An existential top level thing, right?
So that's what I was wondering about this actually too. Well, responsibility. He mentions it a little. But I was really happy to see this. This is when he said, like, you mean like when he talked about the absurd tells me there's no future.
Yeah.
This section about the future, right? I did like that section where he said like mystics and slaves. He said mystics and slaves feel free, but it's not real freedom. It's a
liberation.
Feeling of liberation, but not real freedom. It's just, and the only thing they're liberated from is they're liberated from responsibility, and that's where this feeling of freedom comes. I thought that was brilliant. That was a great section. Whereas apparently, see, he didn't spell this out as far as I'm pretty sure he didn't, but I'm sure he was trying to say, whereas death does give you ultimate freedom with responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So I liked what he said too. Like these mystics and slaves, they don't belong to themselves. Quite literally, they belong to God and their master. But death itself gives you you. You belong to yourself finally when you see death. And and then because you belong to yourself finally, you are responsible for your actions and not your master, not your God anymore. I'm assuming this is what he was trying to say.
Yeah, and as a slight confirmation with this, and I'm going to jump ahead, but it's only one page into the future, so don't freak out. But I mean, just like when he's going to talk a little bit about morality on page in the Absurd Man. And I just want to read a brief quote, which is, all systems of morality are based on the idea that an action has consequences that legitimize or cancel it. In other words, there may be responsible persons, but there are no guilty ones. Okay, so I mean, like, again, he's willing to give this a notion of responsibility weight. It's just that in some metaphysical sense, you're not guilty, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's willing to go along with notions of responsibility, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, like in a fundamental way, the slaves have kind of given themselves over to someone else and relieved themselves of that responsibility.
Yes, and
which is very existentialist.
I felt very in the existentialist zone at that when those sentences came around too. It kind of reminded me too, like just on he brought death back in here too, which I liked. He said, I really liked the way he phrased it. It was just strange when I read it again. It's been so long since I read this book, and I read it again. It's like, so death tells you don't have the freedom to be. What a strange sentence at first, but I mean, I'm assuming the meaning of this has got to be, in other words, you're going to die, right? You don't get to choose whether you live or die. You will die, right? You don't have that freedom to continue living as long as you want. It's going to come against your will, and you're going to die. Right? You have no choice in the matter. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. So maybe I just like how he said, like, when you see this, like, you live without hope and you live without someday. And I don't know, just it strikes me sometimes in my normal life every day. When I talk to my coworkers and stuff, like, my coworkers we have a very relaxed working atmosphere, and they make, for example, they make a lot of just real small talk, like really meaningless small talk, and they make a lot of off-color jokes, and which is all cool, it's all fine, but it's just kind of always interesting to me. It's just it always seems to me that in the back of their minds they're thinking, even while they're making jokes that could be interpreted as racist, or jokes that are racist, jokes that are sexist, as they're making these jokes, it always occurs to me that they're thinking, kind of like Camus said, they're thinking of someday. They're thinking of the future. In other words, like, this is what I'm doing now, but this isn't me. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm doing and who I am are different. And there's going to be a day when I prove that I'm not sexist. There's going to be a day that I prove that I'm not racist. But that day is not today. That's someday. Today is off day. Today is play day. I get to say whatever I want today. And it just occurs to me, like, what you're talking about when you talk watching people die. Just we talked about this before too. When you say this, when you tell me this about when these videos of watching people die, it's one thing that does, like, I think about when you say that is, you know, it would just be so freaky if, like, I was sitting around with my coworkers and they're making all, like, made all these kind of crazy racist, sexist jokes, and then I walked out and I was hit by a car. You know what I mean? Like, that someday never came where I could be me. You know what I mean? Like, those moments kind of disappear, those off days, those days that are meaningless. They disappear, and everything becomes that much more vivid. Everything becomes that much more a kind of self-creation of who I am, instead of just putting it off in some mysterious future.
Right. It gets your life isn't going to work out in the story that you think it's going to be. Whereas, you know, like, you're not promised this kind of ultimate redemption and a good life, happy old age retirement story. Like, one day you could just be walking down the street and it's over. I mean, like, can you be happy with your life if tomorrow you got hit by a car? Could you say that was you, right? And a lot of the days I think we're giving ourselves breaks. I don't think we are living each day lucid, to be honest. I don't think we're living each day aware of death. I think we're just putting it off. And if we really did feel the way Camus said, then it might be a life-changing experience. Yeah.
And I do, like I said, even at work, I have these conversations with my coworkers and stuff. And one day, of course, the eternal question came up. You know, if the world was going to end tomorrow, what would you do? And we went around and asked everybody, like, oh, I'd be out screwing all these chicks, or I'd be out spending all my money gambling or something. I don't know, like, can I do it? Will this be a cop-out? Well, just tell me how much of a cop-out you think I am. When it finally came around to me, and they said, what would you do if the world was going to end tomorrow? You know, would you be out in Roppongi? Would you be out in Kabukicho? And I just said, I would live exactly the same way I've lived the last 2 years or 3 years. You know what I mean? I wouldn't change a bit of it. And half of it was out of sheer, in a weird way, revolt, out of sheer rebellion. You know what I mean? Like, to do so would be to deny what I've done up until now, to say it was just a facade that I was waiting for someday. And I mean, and on top of that, I really do believe that's what I would do. I would just go home and, you know, spend time with my family, with my wife. But
you wouldn't go to work the next day, though, would you?
Oh, God, no.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't do that. She's okay. All right. Definitely not. I would not. I would definitely not go to work. All right. That's out. Yeah, definitely. I might, and I would not download Angry Birds or.
You're kidding. You could be playing Candy Crush right at the end. What do you?
Delicious.
I mean, but would Camus say that in a crazy ultimate way, like every one of the actions ultimately meant the same thing?
Ultimately, yeah. Ultimately, yeah. I mean, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and one thing I really liked also in this essay, just on this topic of ultimately, one thing he says that I really liked was the fact that he tried to balance out. He said, like, look, I don't know. I don't know if there is a meaning to the universe. Who knows? But there's one thing I do know. It's that I don't know what it is. Yeah. And I don't have access to it. And I will never have access to it. And that's enough. I mean, like, you're out of the loop, right? Yeah. Maybe there is, but we can't get it, right? So that's it. Right there, at that point, maybe you got to start thinking like an absurd man.
Yeah,
him.
I like that part. I mean, like part of his revolt kind of revolved around this idea that of the unknown. Actually, is that we don't know not how the world works, how the universe works, if there's meaning in the world. I mean, he also suggested that we don't even know much about ourselves either.
Mm.
That there's a part hidden from us, some deep desires in the heart that reveal themselves only through action. So, and we're even alien to ourselves.
Mm.
Oh. Yeah, well, even that's pretty early on. He says, I can't even know myself. I can only know my attributes.
Yes.
So all you've
Yes.
got is this kind of conscious bit of you that you can work with, and yeah, I guess he's trying to figure out if that's do we need anything more than that? All right, he wants to live the experiment with only that.
Yeah.
It's quite
He's got a real focus on consciousness in here. Like,
yeah,
it's got to be in consciousness. And I mean, eventually I could see why. At first I was like, whoa, he's got a real hard-on for consciousness. But consciousness is what gives you the absurd. The absurd doesn't exist without consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And the absurd and the revolt give life meaning. So you got to have consciousness in this equation, which I thought was really cool. Like, it's definitely... There's a reason why Heidegger kind of came up once and then he just fell out of the story later, because it's hard to place him. But I can see why he was like, along with these other guys like Jaspers and Kierkegaard, right? Why he would feel like placing him in the non-consciousness side, in the irrational world side. I can really, because Heidegger really does place a lot of focus on the world and action in the world too. So I thought it's very nice to see him unapologetically cheering for consciousness and conscious lucidity. That was kind of a nice part of the book too.
all right. I guess that's about all I want to say for this first part.
Mm.
Either you two have anything you want to talk about?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, it's kind of indirectly related, but I'm going to start with a very outside question first. So, people, sometimes you talk to people, I'm sure, Dustin, you do. That's for sure. And you watch them after you watch a movie, after you watch a TV show, or even if you read philosophy, something like if you watch a movie and you talk about the meaning of the movie. So, like during Christmas, I watched Gremlins, and I have this real deep, detailed analysis of what I think Gremlins means. So, but of course, there's always that person who says to me, "What are you doing? Why do you have to think about it? Why can't you just enjoy the movie? That's all it's there for you to be done. It's just there for you to enjoy it. Why do you have to sit down and analyze it? You ruin it. You wreck it when you do that. Why do you think people think that way?"
I've had a similar experience, and I'm not 100% sure, but it's part of it seems that they're afraid that if what happens when I like this movie, but there's perhaps a message in there that contradicts my values. As that would cause
discovering that, becoming lucid of what's there.
Yeah, that kind of somehow thinking about it would kind of undermine my enjoyment of the experience if I find out there's something in there that I don't want to be in there.
Mm-hmm. So they're afraid of the truth.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that you brought this up as an example, because I thought of this. I was going to use this as an analogy before I was going to use the Matrix. It's like, I was going to say, would you, for example, I was going to ask you would you rather go back to a time when you couldn't analyze movies the way you do now, or would you want to continue on this route? I mean, like, I don't think there's anything you would never ever dare to go back to a time when you simply just enjoyed movies on a simply only surface level. I mean, I don't think there's anything that could convince you that was a better way of watching movies somehow.
A sizable bribe.
Hmm?
A sizable bribe.
Couple million, yeah.
Okay. Okay, you can go back to watching movies on the surface level. Why do people only insist on the fact that they just want to enjoy their movies? I don't know. I mean, like, the cynical part of me says that they're afraid of uh, looking stupid. When I mean, like, I feel bad sometimes when I do this to people. I turn to them and I say, "So, what happened here?" And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, did you notice in this scene that they did this? And in this scene it was like this? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so what do those two things have in common? And they're like, hmm. And then they sit there with this kind of glum face, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, let me tell you my idea of what they have in common. And they're like, and I feel bad because I'm not out there to make them look like a fool. I mean, the purpose of this isn't for me to make them look stupid, but in the end, I feel like somehow if I'm not careful about what I'm doing, I make them feel like they are fools, and that they have been somehow drifting along in Stupidville. And people will, they just hate the idea that they haven't enjoyed or they haven't seen fully into what a movie is. And I think they hate looking stupid. So as cynical as that answer is, I feel like I do that. I sense that sometimes.
Yeah.
I like that too. So yeah, like a fear of looking stupid, a fear of being seen as shallow. And Jesse, I would definitely want to keep what you said too, like a fear that something's in there that you wouldn't like. What do you think about this too? Can I throw this in? What do you guys think about this? Do you think that some people, without thinking about it, kind of think this? Of course, you shouldn't think about it. It's all stupid and meaningless. So what's the point? Of course, it's stupid. It's a movie. What are you talking about? Of course, it's stupid. Of course, it's just a bunch of stuff people made up and put in front of a camera to make you laugh, randomly, almost. Of course, there's nothing there. You're just making all this crap up. You know.
I think that those people don't know that there's a reason why they laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, they fundamentally don't know that there's tricks to all this stuff. I mean, they just don't see it. And they're like, I mean, to me, it's like the masked man almost. To bring back Ortega here. Like, it's so natural to them that they're kind of like, oh, of course movies are like that. It just shocks me. It's like this complete lack of imagination. I'm like, but why is this shot like this? Why is it this color? And they're like, well, of course it's that color. It's that scene in the movie. It's just this fundamental lack of imagination. Like, and they just take it for granted that things just work the way they do without a second thought. Like, oh, I don't know. Like, there's no trick behind the thing. And then when you point out a trick, they're like, well, right.
Yeah, like sometimes they don't believe you. You meet resistance too. Like, and I think it might have to do with what you said too about like looking stupid, not having seen it, or pride issues, or if it's something alarming, like you said, Jesse, I'm sure they resisted just simply because they liked it, but then they see something that they didn't really like, and they might not be able to enjoy it as they did before. I don't know. It just kind of reminded me of a little, in a weird way. This is touching on a lot of strange parts in Camus, but where he said, like, he talked about how the existentials, he talked about, kind of recommended, like, kind of weird philosophical suicide. Seems a lot of people, when they watch movies, they recommend movie suicide. You know what I mean? Like, don't think about it. Don't. It's stupid. It's stupid to think about. Don't think about it. Just enjoy, wahaha, and you're done. Don't ever become lucid about what's going on. And it also reminded me, too, about, he's in the beginning, that really great line where he said, thinking undermines you. Or thinking begins a process of undermining you, like Jesse, you mentioned. You don't realize that at first, but slowly but surely, life seems to get more and more groundless. It doesn't have that firm base you thought it had at one time, and things get, I guess, maybe people who this affects, they desperately need a kind of certainty, or a metaphysical certainty. They're just desperate for it, and the more it slips away, the more life seems worse and worse, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like people, and I don't know, maybe we're kind of accusing Camus in a certain way of this if he's ignoring meaning, but like if there's not just some kind of absolute certainty there, they want to avoid it. Like I don't know, but I don't. Can I blame it a little bit on our culture and academia?
Oh,
and
definitely.
a culture of anti-intellectualism. In other words, without a very firm grasp of how a script is written and how a movie is shot, all they're simply raised to believe is that it's I don't know. I don't want to blame this on Freud or Anna Freud or Bernard Mays or anyone, but all they see it is this kind of like rationalization. I mean, they have this quick answer like, oh, you're just rationalizing the way you felt about it. And that's all it is. You just felt this way, and now you're just making up a bunch of stuff that no one could have possibly thought when they made the movie. And you're seeing, for example, faces in clouds. And no one wants to be the guy that sees faces in clouds. They're so scared to be that guy.
Yeah.
To be the guy that's, and that's what they accuse, I don't know, Anita Sarkeesian of and movie critics of, and like you're just looking at faces in clouds. It's a bunch of rationalization. Give it up. It's just a bunch of you exploring your own mind. Of course, no one thinks like this, you loser. And if it's not this kind of hard empirical data, no, that couldn't possibly in there. I mean, they say all this without any knowledge, by the way, of how a movie is made.
Yeah.
With little to no experience about it, or even, and I hate to say it, but we are just simply not raised to be that critical and look at stories and movies in that way, right? There could be patterns in them, and when we try to do it, we're really bad at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so few good models. Just speaking in the learning sense, like you need a good model to start things off with, and there are so few good models in broad society in general who tease apart meanings in movies like in detailed ways, like scene by scene analysis. Unless you're going to film school, you don't get exposed to that at all anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feels like they just feel that all it is just not there.
Yeah.
It's all a bunch of rationalization, and that's it. And it's just basically your kind of mental masturbation, and all you're doing is standing up there trying to make yourself look smart and make them look like a fool. Like, oh, look at how smart I am, and look at how stupid you are for not catching these scenes that don't even exist, or these things in the movie that don't even exist, right? Well, yeah, I mean it's a clever rationalization of your own. I really feel like it's that. I really do. And it is a kind of movie suicide. I mean, once you actually get it, though, once you realize that analyzing it is what makes it special, as opposed to not, which is a throwaway culture, basically kind of a crazy kind of ukiyo-e kind of culture here, where you just take a movie and throw it away, take a movie and throw it away, and it becomes the wrapping for other goods or something, right? I mean, it falls to that level of, I mean, to me, ultimately, it's self-defeating, too. Like, I mean, when you start doing that to everything you consume, nothing means anything anymore. It's all just equivalent nothingness.
Yeah, right. It becomes the same mishmash of just crap. And doesn't it also remind you way, way back when we were reading Solomon 2, where he said, like, people fear thinking about their emotions because they'll ruin their emotion. They say, don't think about love. Thinking about love spoils it. Talking about love spoils it. Talking about your happiness spoils it. Because they're afraid it's going to be undermined at some level, simply by becoming lucid of the reasons why. And the same conclusion can be drawn. Like, it makes it even more special if you can talk about it.
Right. I mean, like, I guess the thing that bugs me is, like, they're like, they don't want to analyze gremlins, per se, because they're like, the first thing they'd be saying is, like, well, of course gremlins can't exist. End of story.
Yeah, right.
That's not the level we're analyzing on.
Exactly,
we're not analyzing on the level of, can gremlins exist? Does the mystical Mogwai exist? That is not the level I'm analyzing this movie on. Yeah. Okay, so, and like, if I don't have that firm grounding of, like, Mogwai exist, if it's not this, like, technical masterpiece or something like whatever Gravity was supposed to be, when it's got so many mistakes, but, like, unless it's this super realist thing, like, well, then there's no point, right? Oh, we can't analyze it in this middle level of what is the story trying to say? What are the motivations of the characters? What is the meaning of the movie, given the fact that Mogwais exist? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels like people are not willing to, like, they can't take that first step of, like, well, let's just pretend Mogwai exist and then analyze the movie. Can we do that? I don't know. They're just not used to doing that.
Oh, I know. I don't want to derail us too much because I think we're nearing the end. But like, also on top of this, I think something way back when we were talking about Wittgenstein, I think people really do, in the back of their mind, have an inaccurate view of meaning. And I think Wittgenstein was onto this in the philosophical investigations. In other words, they think that, for example, for the movie to mean something, the director has to kind of put the meaning into the scene. In other words, like he sends his mental energy onto the mogwai for it to mean something. Remember when Wittgenstein talked about how do you say boo 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 and mean it's cold or outside, right? That's not how meaning works. But people think that. They're like, well, how do you know? Can you read the director's mind? Right? That's your first clue that they might have an incorrect view of meaning. That meaning is kind of telepresenced onto by the directors and the makers, right? So I really think this blocks a lot of people too, and they should be reading their Wittgenstein.
Yeah, okay. So that's an excellent point.
I get hit with this enough. I had to sit and stew about it till Wittgenstein popped into my head. So, especially when I talk about Gremlins, because Gremlins totally has a lot of meanings in it. Don't you deny? We could do a whole video about Gremlins.
Well, God, you've seen me talk about songs, 4 minute songs.
Sorry. We'll just start a sub-series of videos, I think, now.
Okay, you want to finish it off here?
Yeah.
All right. Shall we sign off?
All right.
All right.
So, to all of our faithful viewers, we appreciate your comments, we appreciate your viewing. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you have time over the weekend, please watch Gremlins and write your theories on the meaning of Gremlins in the comments.
Yeah. Yes. It's always midnight somewhere. All right.
Yeah.